Did you have good holidays?
Doing good. Had really good holidays.
All right, I'm glad to hear it. Well, I'm not going to hold things up. If other people join us, we'll just include them. But let's get started. So, if you were with us last month, we had several speakers, and tonight's the night where I get to talk a lot. So, at any point, if you have questions, feel free to just pause and just shout out your questions. I'll be happy to answer them while you're thinking about them. So, we're going to cover the basics about like financial literacy and credit. So some of this will probably be review for most of you if you've been working with your household budget, but it's really important stuff. And hopefully there'll be a few tidbits in there that you haven't come across before as well. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our slideshow. Welcome, Dwight. Good to see you.
Hi, I was trying hard to get in. I don't know what happened.
Sometimes Zoom is like that. No worries.
All right.
Well, we are going to jump into our slideshow here. If I can get my screen to share. How's that? Can you see that? Can you guys see the slideshow that popped up there?
I see it.
Awesome. Okay, great. All right, so this one is called Making Every Dollar Count, and it's about financial fitness. They say money talks, mine just waves goodbye. That's pretty standard for my household. It's mostly all allocated. So a little bit about Neighborhood Housing Partnership. Our mission is to create and preserve affordable, quality housing, helping strengthen neighborhoods through partnerships with residents, businesses, and government. Neighborhood Housing Partnership, we are a HUD-approved housing counseling agency, and HUD is the federal government. They oversee it and make sure that we're doing things exactly like they want us to. We're approved for housing counseling in Clark, Champaign, Logan, Greene, Putnam, Auglaize, and Allen counties. Those are generally the counties we serve, but we can also go outside of that anywhere in Ohio and even across the country and teach homebuyer education. We are also a chartered member of NeighborWorks America. It's a national network of nonprofit organizations that support affordable housing and home ownership initiatives in local communities. So we are local here in Springfield. So this is kind of like the plan of how we work things. So NeighborWorks, the organization, has a big partnership, and then we take care of like the smaller things like pre-purchased homebuyer education. We do the one-on-one coaching. We sometimes are able to offer flexible loan products. So in the past, we have helped finance people. We're not currently doing that now for homes. We do have some financing for some of our other programs for like emergency repairs. We have some property services at our emergency repair program. If you own a home and something goes wrong and you're not able to cover the costs, we can help with some low interest loans. And occasionally we even have grant money. And then we also have post-purchase counseling, which would be if you're having trouble making your mortgage payments, we have free counselors that can help navigate through that foreclosure process. So hopefully you can stay in your home. Sometimes that can be really difficult when you're working with a lender to make those specific plans and how to make those successful, but we can do that for free. A little bit more about that, the pre-sale part of what we do, the homebuyer education, which you guys know quite a bit about since most of you have been here last month. We also do credit counseling and financial literacy. We typically will do those in workshops or one-on-one. We can also help with packaging the USDA loan, which is a special kind of loan for people buying in rural areas. And then post-sale, the home repair program. We oversee the construction for those, the foreclosure prevention, and then we also have housing development. If any of you are familiar with Springfield, where the old community hospital used to sit on High Street in Burnett, we built those one-level apartments, they're senior housing. And then we have some other senior housing that's over near the STEM school where the Old South High School is at. And we're just trying to help revitalize some of those neighborhoods and make sure that people have quality, affordable homes to rent. Homebuyer education. So why do we teach this? It's positive because it builds a strong financial foundation for people that participate. We find that when people go through this education, the classes, they tend to be more default resistant. So it's less likely that you're going to have issues paying your mortgage down the road. It's important to learn how and why to maintain a good credit score. We're going to be talking a lot about credit today. Helps with understanding the home buying process. You can attend the loan closing with more confidence and understanding the importance of increasing the home equity and how to protect your investment. And then it also creates a schedule for ongoing home maintenance. All right, any questions so far? All right, so the home buying process. There are several steps to this, and you can find these online, and this was kind of like the basic breakdown that I wanted you to know. Gathering information about home buying, which is why you're here, right? That's the goal, is to learn about what is this process about. Determining if you're ready to buy a home. Now this step, we do a lot of that in our one-on-one coaching sessions. Making sure that you've got a steady job and enough income. We would check your debt to income ratio to make sure that you've got enough income and lower debt to make sure that you're going to be approved for the home loan. Savings in the bank, that's another important thing. Checking your credit health. Credit scores, generally we're seeing the loans, people are able to get loans if you've got a credit score of 580. That's kind of on the low side, but there are some loan products out there that some banks will approve you for. Most banks, we're seeing them require a 640 or above, and then a credit score of 720 or above generally gets you a better interest rate. So you get better deals on those when you have a better credit score on those types of loans. We want to make sure that you're ready to commit to living in one place. Buying and selling a home is hard. Most people stay in their home at least 5 years or more. And I see if you're prepared to be the landlord, because as James went over last week, you are now the person who's in charge of the maintenance. And are the market conditions right? We know that interest rates are really low right now, but the housing market, the inventory of how many homes are available for sale isn't so good. So sometimes that can make things a little bit tighter. We can also help you calculate how much house you can afford. You definitely want to know that going into it. And then getting pre-approved for a mortgage loan. Once you have all those steps in place of, are you ready? Then that's where you actually start putting the rubber to the road, where you would go to the bank and get pre-approved, then decide what kind of house you need or want, which most of us kind of do that pretty early on. But then that's time for you to start shopping for the home. And then making an offer, getting your home inspections and appraisals. Then you would apply for the mortgage loan, the actual loan. Mostly when you're pre-approved, they get a pretty good idea of if you're going to be approved for the loan, and then applying for the mortgage loan, you're kind of finalizing the paperwork. Step 10, you would get insurance on the home, and then you would close the loan. And that's a process where you meet, it's kind of one of the big final steps where you meet up with typically you meet with the seller A lot of times the realtors are involved, and you sign a ton of paperwork. And I mean, it may take you an hour to sign all the paperwork that they have. So it's a lot of that. And we want to make sure that you are going into that closing feeling confident, that you're not concerned about what you're signing. And then step 12, moving into the home. That's a whole nother process once you actually get to that point. All right, so that's the home buying process. And I'm going to send out these slides for you after class today so that you have those if you want to refer back to them. So a little bit more about the one-on-one coaching sessions that we do. I typically would meet with you if you decided you wanted a one-on-one session, because in class, we really don't want to get into, hey, what's your income? How much debt do you have? That's really personal information. So we want to save that for the one-on-one. And we would sit down and see what kind of goals you have and assess how long it's going to take to get there. Identify any credit issues. We would develop an action plan together. We can assist with settlements or disputes of anything on the credit. And then we can do follow-up sessions as needed. And we can also refer you to agencies or other organizations or even programs within neighborhood housing partnership. And then to schedule a one-on-one appointment, you can just call me or shoot me an email and we'll get you on the calendar. Okay. So let's see, I see, was that Piper that joined us? Awesome. Just want to make sure that I know you're accounted for. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, so we are talking about financial literacy for this first section. So how did you guys learn about money? Anybody want to give me a shout out about how they were learning, how you've learned about money as you've grown up? Anybody brave enough to talk tonight? Well, that's all right. I'm going to go forward here. Most people say that you learn about it from your parents or your family as you're growing up, from experience, from the media, from friends and coworkers. And sometimes, well, most of us have had the experience of making mistakes and learning that way. So that's kind of the basics of how most of us learn about money. And hopefully, once you get done with this class, you may be able to help influence somebody else learning about money, especially if you've got kids in the household. Being a good role model can be really important for how they behave later on. Many things shape our money personalities, your childhood experiences, the people you're around, your age. I know my financial goals at 19 were very different than they are now at 45. Sometimes your mood, sometimes, you just are tired out and you don't want to go home and cook dinner and you blow it at McDonald's on your way home from work. So those things do happen. Some people have most people have different money beliefs. Some people believe that money's for enjoyment, or it's for security, or for sharing. Sometimes people think it's mysterious. It's this thing that they just can't quite grasp. Some people might think it's, the almighty dollar in awe of money. For some people, it's scary. And for most of it, it's a mix of things. So increasing demand for money management. We're seeing lots of people starting to want to know more and more about this. In general, the consumer debt in the US, the average household owes $6,850 generally in just credit card debt. And the average household has approximately 3 credit cards. We've seen a reduction in savings. The personal savings rate was about 7.6% back in 2019. With the pandemic, we're seeing the savings rate going down even further. Most people that have been out of work are living off of their savings and are not able to save as much. Payday lending has definitely caused an increased demand in our area. Springfield has more alternative lending locations than traditional banking locations, and they tend to be very high in their fees and very high in their interest rates. It kind of puts people behind the 8 ball in it if they have to use those services. And just a reminder, all of our coaching services are free at Neighborhood Housing Partnership. The only cost that we do have from time to time is if we pull a credit report. Individual reports are $32.60. And if you have a joint report, like for a couple, that would be $51.95. And those are really kooky numbers just because that's the cost that it costs us. We don't make any money when we pull the credit report. So money management needs to be learned. You're not just born knowing it. You usually have to make sure it's on purpose, make a plan and stick with it. And it really helps to include everyone in the household. Now, of course, the kids wouldn't necessarily be involved in saying exactly where everything goes, but if they know that they're saving maybe for a down payment, and maybe that's why you're not going out to eat regularly or cutting back on certain things, it helps them to understand what's going on. So here are some examples of good money management and bad money management or poor money management. On the blue side, allowances are made for the little extras. You're not thinking that through ahead of time. A budget is planned and monitored regularly, sticking to the budget and prioritizing your needs versus wants. Keeping a check on your flexible friend. That's what they're calling the credit cards. Bills and statements, make sure you're opening them and checking them, and putting money aside for emergencies. That's an example of good money management. Poor money management, maybe spending on things you can't afford, not planning or budgeting at all, not prioritizing of your needs or wants, impulse buying or using those credit cards without checking in and making sure you've got the money to cover it. Bills and statements are not opened or aren't checked, and then you're sliding into creeping debt. So those are some basic examples of good and bad. So the 10 basic rules of money management to make sure that you're managing things well. Number 1, have a plan. 2, set financial goals. 3, know your financial situation. Determining your wants versus your needs. We're going to go into in depth with these in a few moments. Not allowing your expenses to exceed your income. That's a big one. Tracking your spending and expenses. Save. Paying your bills on time. Using credit wisely. And developing a realistic spending plan or budget. So number 1, having a plan. Sometimes people call this a budget. Sometimes they like to call it a spending plan. Some fancy people call it a financial blueprint. Basically, all those things are an estimate of your income and what you have to spend for a set period of time. A lot of people will do it for a pay period. Maybe that's every 2 weeks, or they'll do it for the month. But you can divide it up however works best for you. And our cartoon there says, why bother to budget? So we can worry before we spend our money as well as after we spend our money. Really, if you have a plan, generally it takes a lot of the worry out of it. So why is a spending plan important? It helps you direct where you want your money to go, allows you to manage your cash flow, helps you live within your income, aids in identifying wasteful spending, assists in preparing for surprises and those larger expenses like buying a house, prioritizing your spending and savings goals, and creates a way to measure progress. All right, I want to just stop for a minute. Anybody have any questions so far or any comments? Got a super quiet class tonight. Everybody still awake out there? All right. I see a few of you. Okay. So setting smart financial goals. So SMART, breaking it down into the acronym, specific goals, measurable goals, achievable, realistic, and timely. So for example, perhaps most of you probably have the goal of buying a house. That's very specific. You'll be able to measure it because you have a house. That's very measurable. Achievable, making sure that you've got the income to be able to buy the house, making sure that you've got some money in the savings. Realistic, making sure that you've got a plan for how to get there. So you're not, thinking, oh, I want to move in 2 months. Well, yeah, if you don't have any money in the savings, that's not realistic. If you're not sure where your credit score is, that would maybe set you back. So you got to make sure that you're thinking along those lines. And timely. How soon do you want to be there? Where do you want to be in a month, a year, 5 years, 10 years? Those are all things that you want to consider when you're making your goals. Identifying goals and values so that they match up. A goal is something that you want to achieve, like buying a home. A value would be something that's fundamentally important to you. Usually it's based on your feelings and experiences, like being independent. Like, I want to have a place where I can put down roots and paint the wall whatever color I want to, and have a yard with a dog. I mean, those would be very specific values that go hand in hand with the goal of buying a home. Generally, I love this quote down here. We find that when we look at people's bank statements, it kind of shows us what they value. And this one specifically says, don't tell me what your values are. Show me where you spend your money and I'll tell you what they are. So taking a look at how you're spending can kind of help give you a different viewpoint. Knowing your financial situation. An asset is a possession that has monetary value. Liability is debt or money that you owe. And your net worth is your assets minus your liabilities. Cash flow. You determine that by finding out what your net monthly income is. And net is what you bring home. So imagine you're getting it in a net and you're carrying it home. Gross is without, before they take out taxes. And then you would calculate, so you got your net income, then you calculate what your monthly expenses are, and then you subtract those. What you have left over is your bottom line. So that is cash flow. Pie charts. I love pie charts because I'm a very visual person, so I like to see these. A little bit of a nerd here. Determining your need versus wants, how they fit into your budget. For most people, that big red section, that 35%, most of what they're spending is on housing. If you're renting, that may be the case. If you own a home, that very well still might be the case. They don't count housing in debt in that 15%, that purple section there. That's usually student loans, credit card debt, that kind of thing. Could be a car loan, but usually they count that over in the transportation section in that teal part. So the average household in the US has 15% of their income going toward debt, 15% going for transportation. Other living expenses is that green section. That's the second biggest, and that's, all the life stuff. Those are groceries and clothes and school fees, entertainment, all that stuff's in there. And then savings, 10%. I would say the average household is probably a little bit below this, but ideally we'd love to see people saving between 10 to 20% of their income if they're able to, as a safety net, or going toward your retirement, saving for things like that. So adjusting your cash flow. Move my screen here. So generally, if your budget doesn't quite make sense for what you've got coming in, there are ways that you can adjust. You can increase your income. Of course, making more money gives you more money to deal with expenses. You can spend less, or you can do both. Obviously, those are the easiest ways to deal with that. And most people, the big bottom blue section of that pyramid is on your essentials, your food, your clothing, your shelter. Up from there is your emergency fund. We really want to see people have an emergency fund because life happens. Your car might break down, or you might have a medical emergency, or a pandemic happens and suddenly you need cash. We really want to make sure that you're taking care of those basic things before you go on to the next step of maybe saving for a down payment, a goal of home ownership. And then at the top would be your lifestyle values. So maybe a vacation or a motorcycle, something like that. All right. So step 5 of money management. Making sure that your expenses don't exceed your income. So let's talk a little bit about expenses here. There are regular fixed expenses. That might be like your rent. It's going to happen about the same time every month. It may be due on the 1st, and it's typically going to be about the same amount due. A regular variable expense might be like your electric bill. Like, it's going to be coming, it's probably due maybe around the 20th of the month typically, but it may go up or down how much is owed. An irregular expected expense could be something like maybe your car insurance. If you're not paying it every month, maybe I know some people do it quarterly or even yearly. So it's coming, but it's not the same time, or it may not be something regularly every month or every pay period within your budget. An irregular unexpected expense could be something that you don't pay regularly, but also something that you weren't really planning on. A flat tire. The kid comes home from school and is like, hey, I want to join the sports team. Oh, wasn't planning on that. That's an unexpected expense. There are fixed expenses where, we kind of talked about those as we went on. Costs each month stay the same. The variable cost each month changes, and the irregulars are medical bills, taxes, car repairs. So if you think about your spending habits, anybody have an example of something that might be easy to change to spend less on or more on?
Eating out would be easy to change.
Absolutely. Yes, eating out. Very good. Yeah. And then something hard to change. Anybody want to think about that? What about like maybe your car payment? That would be a really hard thing to change, or your rent payment. In order to do that, you'd have to either refinance with your car or move to change your rent. That would be a really hard thing to change. So when it comes to thinking about your spending habits, most of us have to be nudged a little bit to start saving or giving things up to go toward our goals. Is your goal worth giving these things up? Maybe, buying a house might be worth giving up fast food for a few months. Are you ready to do this? Sometimes people want to do other things with their budget before they start saving for a house. So maybe paying down credit card debt could be an example, or paying off anything that's affecting their credit report negatively. That could be another thing. So I'd just like you to think while we're talking tonight about one thing that you're willing to commit to doing right now. Maybe it's planning out your budget. Maybe it's tracking your spending, or maybe cutting back on something. And so we're talking a lot about money tonight, and I just want to remind you, the quote at the bottom was Warren Buffett. It's not everything. Of the billionaires I've known, money just brings out the basic traits that they already have. If they were jerks before they had money, they're simply jerks with $1 billion. So while we're talking a lot about it, we know it's not everything. All right, so ways to maximize income. You could sell stuff. You could rent out a room. Airbnb is super popular right now, and there are even places and people that rent their cars or other things. Selling stuff on, Facebook Marketplace, that's really popular right now. Freelancing or starting a small business. We have a lot of clients who have a side hustle where they may make crafts or do hair or mow lawns. That's a way to increase your income. Maybe taking on a part-time job or bumping up to a full-time job, or even applying for benefits. If you're eligible for food stamps and that can help squeeze a few more dollars out of your budget, we definitely encourage you to take advantage of those types of things. All right, step 6, tracking your spending and expenses. So this is our Budget Busters page. Just few examples of how much things add up to over time. So for $1.50 for a cup of coffee, just 5 days a week, and that's not even the good coffee, right? That adds up to $30 per month and $360 a year. So even making small changes like that can make an impact. Pack of cigarettes, 1 pack a day, $8. I'm not sure how much they're going for these days, but at $8 a pack, they're $240 per month, which adds up to almost $3,000 a year. That's quite a bit. Lunch out, fast food. And again, not even the good meal, just like a biggie meal over at Wendy's, $5 for 5 days a week for a month. That's $100. And that's $1,200 per year. And then a pizza, just maybe on Friday nights, a $10 pizza ends up being $480 a year. So there are lots of ways that you can kind of think things through as far as changing your spending habits. All right, so how to track spending and expenses. We encourage, if you're going to undertake this, to do it, we encourage people to look at it for a month. So generally, that covers most of the regular expenses. So gathering your bills that you pay monthly, collecting receipts. My husband is a master at this. At the end of the month, his wallet looks like a hamburger because he's got so many receipts stuffed in there. Gathering information for irregular expenses. Like if you know birthdays or Christmas is coming up, you might want to start thinking about that and tracking the money that you spend on those things. Some people like to do it the old-fashioned way, use a notebook, just write everything down. Some people like to do it on an app. There are lots of free apps out there that you can do that with. Using online financial management tools. Sometimes banks will have special, let's see, I believe one of them was called a virtual wallet. Well, anyhow, there are ways that you can track if you're spending on groceries or gas or home improvement, those types of things that kind of group it together for you. And then make sure that you're estimating additional expenses as needed. For example, let's see, next month we have a birthday in my family and Valentine's Day. So I know I need to put a little extra aside for those things. Oh, and reviewing your bank statements and your credit card statements. That's also something that we would include in that tracking your expenses. And then reducing spending. So we know what your expenses are going for, once you've tracked it and written it all down. Making mini cuts can really be helpful. We saw that with the cup of coffee, the budget busters, comparison shopping, using coupons and sales, eating in as much as possible. You mentioned not going out for fast food. Absolutely. Buying used clothes, trading services, attending free events. That's really easy to do around here. We've got the park. They host all those music and plays and things down there for free. Planning meals and shopping with a list. That's a big one. That way you're not impulse buying at the grocery store when you're hungry. Sometimes refinancing makes sense. I know at one of my banks, I was looking at their ads and they were saying, hey, we'll refinance your car if you've had it for more than 2 years, and maybe you'll get a lower rate. Especially if you maybe had to get a car and your credit wasn't real good, and then over time you've made regular payments, so your credit score's probably gone up. That can be a real benefit to refinancing. Carpooling, saving energy, making sure those lights get turned off. Include spending money for all the household members. This was really helpful for my family. We have teenagers in my household. I'm like, okay, here's your spending money for the week. Once it's gone, it's gone. You have to figure out how to manage it and budget. Choosing appropriate financial products and services. All right, talk a little bit about reducing debt. There are many ways to do this. These are two of the popular ways. The snowball effect. So with the snowball, you're paying off debts from the lowest balance to the highest balance. So with that, you want to make the minimum payment to everything. For example, say you have 3 credit cards. You want to make sure you're making at least the minimum payment to all of those. And then the one with the lowest balance, you want to put extra money toward, maybe an extra $50 or $100 if you have it per month, until that's gone. And then you take the money you were spending on that lowest balance and you move to the next lowest balance, and you take all the money toward that while you continue to make the minimum payments on the other cards until you've wrapped up the smallest and then the middle, and then you get to the highest balance. So it kind of snowballs as the money, as you pay things off, you can snowball that money and it gets bigger toward the next step. The avalanche is a little bit different. That's where you're paying off the debts from the highest rate to the lowest rate. So for example, maybe you have a credit card you've got an interest rate of 25%. And then you've got a car loan that's maybe, I don't know, 10% interest. So maybe you want to pay off that one with a really big interest rate first. So you, again, make the minimum payments to everything and put extra money toward that credit card that's got the high interest rate. And once that's paid off, then you take all the money you were paying toward that credit card and put it toward your car loan. So those are 2 common ways to pay off debt. Any questions about that? Or anything? Nope. Okay. Again, feel free to stop me if you think of something at any point. Happy to answer questions. All right, so step 7 in money management, saving. What kind of things should we be saving for? Emergencies, number 1. So we all know life happens. Generally with emergencies, we love to see people start off with the goal of maybe $500 in the savings. And once you get that to that point, we would love to see you being able to cover a whole month's worth of expenses in your savings. And then ideally up to 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. So for example, if the pandemic happened and you had to be out of work for a month, you would be taken care of. You have enough money in your savings to cover a whole month's worth. Other things you would want to save for: buying a house, a down payment, buying a car, a vacation, major purchases, maybe special events like Christmas, birthdays, or a wedding, your college funds, and definitely retirement. Understanding the importance of saving. Generally, we encourage people to save 10% of your income every month. And you would kind of base that off of, of course, just find out what your income is, multiply it times 10%, you'd know about what that is. And then also we would look at your income versus your expenses and what's left. So if you were to save $2 a day, and banks don't have super great interest rates right now, so we put it kind of low at 0.02%, then you were, if able to save that over 2 years' time, you'd have about $1,500 in the bank. 1,400. There we go. That's a little closer. Building your savings. When it comes to savings, you want to pay yourself first. Just like you would pay your electric bill, you want to make sure that you have a line on your budget for savings. So you're taking care of that before you get down to the other expenses like going to the grocery or entertainment. You want to make sure that you've got that savings taken out of your budget up front. Opening a savings account where it's not easy to access funds can be helpful. Maybe not the same bank where you do your checking at. Maybe go and open another account somewhere else so it's a little harder to access. Keeping your change. A lot of people have a change jar that they throw their change in at the end of the day. Put that in the savings account. If you get a windfall, make sure you're banking it. Maybe not all of it if it's like tax return time and you want a new pair of shoes or you've got something special you're thinking about, but definitely make sure you're putting some of it away. So what's the state of your rainy day? Maybe you don't have one, or maybe you have at least that $500 in the savings, or maybe you're doing really great and you have 3 to 6 months of your salary in savings. Definitely take stock on how your savings is doing. All right, paying your bills on time. This is the number one thing that affects your credit score. And also, it is expensive to routinely pay your late fees or late payments. So definitely paying your bills on time can help save money. Using credit wisely. Beware of scams. Credit card companies, they'll loan you money up to 30% interest with as many fees as you're willing to pay. Payday advance companies, they'll loan you money on your paycheck before you even earn it, and they're going to be charging 300 to 500% interest. Huge fees. Rent-to-own companies, they'll sell you an item and you may pay 2 or 3 times as much as the actual price of it. And it's disguised as affordable weekly payments. If you don't have a plan for your money, the marketplace or the media has a plan to get it away from you. Buying on loan is a sure way to pay double or even more. And we're going to talk a lot about credit here in the next hour. Just so you know, opting out, there are ways that you can prevent from getting those solicitations by phone or mail. I know we get a lot of credit card offers in the mail, and you can actually go to these online or phone call, make a phone call to these places and reduce the amount of stuff you're getting in the mail, or even the phone calls, like the car warranty people that call you. You can reduce those by calling and getting on their do not call lists. Probably won't cut out everything, but it will make a dent in it. All right, the last step in spending, financial spending, developing a plan. Plan according to your current income. Ideally, we'd like to see a plan at least for the first month and then ahead for 6 months. Include spending money for everybody in the household. Make sure you're setting aside money for emergency. And make sure everybody agrees or has buy-in. It really can derail your budget if not everybody is on the same page. It's important to talk about those things. All right, just a quick review: identifying your goals, tracking your income, assessing your current situation, making budget adjustments, create your spending plan, follow the plan, and track your spending, adjust the plan, and then you generally have to check back in. It's not something that just takes care of itself. Usually you make a plan and then you might get off the path a little bit. In a couple months, you check back in, you're like, oh yeah, I had this goal. I better reevaluate, make sure I'm doing what I want to be doing. All right, so just a quick review of why use a spending plan. Puts you in control of your money, helps you set your priorities and helps you make financial decisions wisely, helps you live within your means and identifying wasteful spending, helps you attain your goals and protect or build your credit rating, helps you take control of your financial future, and having a spending plan helps educate your children or maybe your grandchildren to be more financially responsible adults. So for next week, I won't call you out on this, but just a goal. Think about using a budget worksheet. Record your monthly income and expenses. Maybe evaluate your needs versus wants. Check in on your savings goal. What is your goal? Commit to balancing your budget or even reaching out to us for financial coaching sessions. And when I send you the PowerPoints for class tonight, I'll also send you some budget worksheets that you can use. You can also find them on Google very easily. All right. So that is the first half of our class. Anybody have any questions? No? All right. Well, we are going to take a 5-minute break. I'll meet you back here at 6:55 and we will talk about credit. All right. Thanks for that 5-minute break. That was just what I needed. All right. I think we might be missing just one person. Let me see here. Madison. Sorry about that. We just took a 5-minute break, but we are back at it. All right. So the next section of the class tonight is going to be on credit. And we focus a lot about this because it is such an important part of getting approved for a mortgage loan. Now, let me start with screen sharing again. Oops. Try again here. All right. Can you guys see that PowerPoint?
I can.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. Yeah, and actually, you know what? I should probably do just a quick check. I've got Jessica here. I've got Taylor. I've got Dwight. I've got Madison and Pepper. Anybody else out there I missed? I think that's everybody. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. All right. So taking charge of your credit. Here we go. The first cartoon here is there's a magnetic strip on the back of every car. The magnets help pull you inside the stores. So how do you know if your credit is good or bad? A sign of a credit crunch. These are some of the common signs. You're paying late fees regularly. If you're exceeding your credit limits, or you don't have any savings. If creditors are closing your revolving charge accounts, a revolving account is like a credit card where you can use it and then pay some and then use it again. Maybe you might be living off your credit cards, paying only minimum payments. Some people are afraid to add up the total amount of debt that they owe, or getting this month's bill before the last months are paid. Those are all signs that maybe things aren't going quite as they ought to. Maybe it's time to get some help. So credit and debt go hand in hand. Debt is the amount that you owe, and credit is a form of trust or a loan. So the amount and kinds of debt influence your credit score. If the amounts that you owe are close to the credit limits, it hurts your score. Your credit score influences your ability to borrow and then get new debt. People with lower credit scores face higher interest rates on credit cards and loans. So the way you use credit influences how you're going to be able to use credit in the future. And basically the idea is the better your credit score is, the better deals you're going to get on loans. So what is credit? There are different types of credit. Basically, overall, it's an arrangement to defer the payment on a loan or a purchase. Installment credit, that would be loans that require repayment of the principal amount and equal periodic payments. So that's, all the technical jargon there, where it's kind of like a car loan, where you make a regular payment and it's going to be over a certain period of time. And then after that time, it ends. It's all paid off. A single payment loan, that would be a loan that requires you to repay all of it, the principal and the interest, by a specific date. And I usually think of this as something where you might get something from, maybe you see advertised on carpet ads all the time, like same as 90 days, same as cash, or furniture stores, where you may go in and you get 3 months. And then if you pay it all at the end of that 3 months, then you don't have to pay extra interest. Of course, if you're one day over that, you're going to be paying a lot of fees and a lot of interest. Revolving credit, that would be like your credit cards, where the loans require periodic minimum payments while borrowing up to the predetermined limit without reapplying for more credit. So you have a credit card, maybe your limit's $500. You use 200 of that, and then you make the minimum payments. Then a few months down the road, maybe you want to buy a tank of gas with it. You do that, and you keep making payments on that. Credit can be used individually. It can be gotten individually. It can be gotten jointly as a couple, or a mom and son, parent child. You can also put someone on as an authorized user, where they're allowed to use the credit, but they're not responsible for making the payments. Sometimes parents will do this for their children, but there are other instances where people do that too. Common sources of credit. Where do you get it? From commercial banks. You would get credit cards, lines of credit, maybe a personal loan, a term loan, installment loans, secured and unsecured loans. So a secured loan would be something that has collateral. For example, a car payment. If you don't pay that payment, they're coming back and they're going to repossess your car. Or house, same difference. If you're not making the payments, it goes into foreclosure and they're going to take the house. An unsecured loan might be like a credit card or personal loan where they don't really have any collateral. Credit unions are very similar to commercial banks. You would get credit cards, lines of credit, term loans, and installment loans, secured and unsecured. All those types of credit you generally can get from credit unions and commercial banks. Credit unions often offer rates and fees that are generally lower. Consumer finance companies. We see these in our community, like One Main Financial is an example of one of them. They have installment loans or second mortgages, and they usually have high interest rates and fees. And then there are check cashers and payday lenders. They give you unsecured short-term loans where you're often paying the maximum interest rate that the law allows, and they usually have the high fees associated with those. And then the last place would be a pawnbroker, where you're getting short-term single payment secured loans. You take something in, they're giving you money for it. You might be able to buy it back, possibly. Extremely high interest rates on those. Why is credit important? For major purchases, right? I don't have $100,000 to buy a house with, or even $25,000 to buy a car. So it's important to be able to buy or to get credit so you can buy those larger things. Credit's also important for qualifying for the best interest rates on those major purchases. And sometimes opportunities depend on credit, like getting that dream apartment. Sometimes they will pull your credit for that. Or getting a really good job. Oftentimes jobs will pull your credit and take a look and see how you're paying bills. Or even insurance companies. To get your best rates, they're going to be looking at your credit. So the 4 C's of credit. We usually talk about this with the lenders, which will be next week's class, or maybe you've already had it in December. But I just wanted to review it quickly so you've seen it again. The 4 C's of credit that lenders are going to require you have for a home loan. Capital, the amount of cash you have available in the bank. They'd usually like to see a paper trail that you've got money in the bank. Capacity, your income. Are you able to make the new home loan payment and take care of all your other expenses? They're going to be looking at that. Your character, that's your credit report or your credit history. It's one of the best ways for a lender to predict if you will repay your loans by looking at how you've handled other debt in the past. And collateral, that's the new home or the thing that they would be securing the loan with. So the house would be the collateral, and they won't loan you any more than the house is worth to buy that home. Any questions about the 4 C's or anything regarding credit so far? Okay, so we know why credit's important. Let's talk a little bit more about the ins and outs of the credit score and the credit in general. So advantages of having credit: you can pay for large purchases while using a product or a service like a car loan or a mortgage loan. You qualify for the best interest rates when you have good credit. Sometimes in emergencies and cash shortages, it can be more convenient. And sometimes you don't want to pull all your money out of the savings. You might choose to use a credit card or some other sort of credit. There are certain circumstances where that might be a better idea. Disadvantages of credit: it can cost more than the cash if you had cash to pay up front because of the interest and the fees. You might be tempted to purchase more than you need or you can afford to pay for. So you have to really be careful with how you use it and think it through well. Disadvantage of credit would be that it ties up your future money, your future income. If you've overspent on something and you hadn't budgeted for that, it may require you to eliminate necessities in order to make payments. Items can be repossessed if they're not paid. And negative credit can follow you for years to come. Typically on a credit report, it stays with you for 7 years. So let's take a quick look about making just minimum payments versus paying more than the minimum payment. So we're going to look at just the minimum payments here for this first slide. And the second one, we'll get into making extra payments. Say you bought a TV, cost you $500. The interest rate is 18%. The interest you're going to pay is $439 over 8 years, that last column. So the total that you're paying, that second to last column, is $939 for a $500 TV. For a computer, say it costs $1,000, same interest rate, 18%. You're going to pay $1,899 in interest. The total you're going to pay for the computer is $2,899. And it takes 19 years to pay that off. Now, my computer is going to be obsolete in 19 years, I'll tell you that. You're going to definitely need a new one before then. And let's say a furniture set. Price, $2,500, 18%, paying interest of $8,781. The total that you're paying for the furniture, $11,281. And it takes 34 years to pay that sucker off. And that's just making the minimum payments over time. So you can see how it really starts to add up and how you're really not winning when you're using credit. So let's take a look at it if you're making more than the minimum payments. The benefit of making a higher payment. So we're just going to look at that furniture for $2,500, and we're going to look at it with different types of payments. So here we have the $2,500 cost for the furniture, same 18%, making the minimum payment, making 404 payments, the 34 years to pay it off, and you've got that $8,781 for the total that you're paying for. So now, if we look down here in the middle row, and you're making an extra $50 on the payment, you're only going to be making 994 payments. So 8 years to pay it off rather than 34 years. That's so much better. And you're cutting the amount you have to pay in half. So you're only paying $4,698. If you're making the bottom row down here, best case scenario, maybe you've got an extra $100 to throw toward that payment on top of the minimum payment. You'll have it paid off in 32 payments, which is 3 years. And you'll be paying much closer to the original price of the furniture, $3,000. So you can see that making more than the minimum payment really pays off in money and time. The quote at the bottom, credit buying is much like being drunk. The buzz happens immediately. It gives you a little bit of a lift, and the hangover comes the day after or the years after as you're making these payments. All right, so let's talk about the credit report and your credit score. That's probably one of the biggest questions I get when people come in for their one-on-one appointments. Like, I want to know what my credit is and how to make it better. Your credit report is the history of how you've paid your obligations. It also includes things like your current balances on outstanding debt, the amount of available credit you have that you're not using, any public records, like if you've been evicted or someone's taking you to court for money, that would be on there, and inquiries about your credit from various companies. So for example, if you're shopping at Kohl's and they say, hey, do you want 10% off your purchase today if you sign up for this credit card? And you say yes, they're going to pull your credit to see if you qualify for the card. And that is considered an inquiry. So your credit score is a number that comes up on your credit report. And that number helps the lenders determine how likely you are to make your payments on time. And basically, it's a summary of how risky you are to give credit to. So there are 3 different types of credit bureaus and 3 different types of scores that they use. Each one has their own. There's the Beacon score, the Empirica score, and the FICO score. And generally, they range between 350 to 800. A little bit more about the credit report. If you were to come into the office and you wanted us to pull your official credit report from the credit bureaus, it would have on it your identifying information, your credit score, your credit history, those public records, and your inquiries. Inquiries, they only track for the last 2 years or 24 months, whereas your credit history, they're going to be tracking for the last 7 years. So a little bit more about that. Negative credit information. So most things, like I said, stay on your credit report for 7 years. So that would be the general civil judgments, foreclosures, charge-offs or repossessions or collections. Any tax liens. If you didn't pay taxes, they could put a lien on your things. The Chapter 13 bankruptcies, dismissed or discharged, those are often 7 years. And other bankruptcies, those will stay on for up to 10 years. We see those a lot. They're less common. So a little more about the public records, the tax liens. It's a claim against your property or whatever they have to file against it by the taxing authority, local, state, or federal taxes. A judgment would be a court order placing a lien on a debtor, including evictions or other debts like medical bills, credit cards that went to court, and one judgment. Bankruptcy are legal release or relief from creditors. A little more about bankruptcies. There's a Chapter 13 and a Chapter 7. Basically, in the Chapter 13, the person who's in debt can keep some of their property or sometimes all of it as long as they're making regular payments. Chapter 7, the person in debt gives up the non-exempt property. Sometimes they'll keep some of it, but they tend to still have to make payments on things. Back in 2005, they made it a lot harder to qualify for a bankruptcy. Requires a lot more and financial counseling and increased costs and time. All right, so credit score. This is a thing that seems to keep people on their toes. They ask a lot about it. So what makes up a credit score? The biggest thing is your payment history. So when you are making payments to the electric company, the credit card companies, your car, your student loans, any of those types of things, they're going to be tracking those payments. If you're making them on time, best case scenario. If you make them late, not so good. You're usually paying fees. If you make them 30 days late, or later, that's when they will report it to the credit bureaus, and that's when it starts to look negatively on your credit score. So the biggest thing you can do to keep your score or improve your score is make your payments on time and don't pay anything more than 30 days late. The next biggest thing is the amounts that you owe, outstanding debt. So that would be, for example, maybe you have a credit card, and if you've got maybe a $500 limit and you've only used maybe $50, $100 on it, that's really good because you have a small amount that you owe versus a larger amount of credit. The length of history, the yellow one, is 15% of your credit score. How long have you had credit history? Are you 18 years old and you just started a credit card or started a loan for a car and you're just starting to pay on it? That doesn't give you a lot of history. So that would look negative on your credit score, would bring your score down. If you have had a long history and you've paid your bills on time, that looks much better and makes your score go up. new credit. Again, for example, if you go out and you open a new credit card or you get a new car loan, having that new fresh credit, that doesn't look so good. So that brings your score down. Types of credit. They love to see a mix of credit, like a credit card or two, like a student loan, a car loan, a personal loan, any of those types of things. They would not really be excited about only having just student loans or just a car loan or just one credit card, because it kind of helps them evaluate how much of a risk you are by looking at a broader range of credit. So that's kind of what impacts your credit score. Any questions about that? All right. So just quick review, the two best things you can do to keep your credit score good or to improve your credit score: pay your bills on time, not 30 days late. So try to avoid that 30 days late and keep your credit balances low. All right, a little bit more about the scores. Each credit agency, credit reporting agency has its own name for its scoring. There are 3 credit reporting agencies. There's Equifax, and they use the Beacon score. TransUnion use the Empirica or Classic score, and Experian uses the FICO score. This is kind of a general bar graph down here that shows what a good credit score looks like. Generally, we're seeing people be able to be approved for homes in as low as a 580, but that's exceptional. Most of the banks want to see a home loan, to be approved for a home loan, to have a credit score of 640 or above. So that's kind of what you're shooting for. Of course, if you have a score of over 700, 720 or above, you're going to get a really great rate. So that's another great goal. Also note that these scores are FICO scores are different than what they call a FACO score or an educational score. So if you're looking at something like Credit Karma or another consumer credit bureau out there that's kind of geared toward helping people work on their credit, those scores are not the same as what the bank is going to be looking at. So they sometimes can be close, but we've seen a variety. If we've looked at Credit Karma and then actually pulled someone's credit, we've seen some that are really high and others that are much lower. So we definitely want to make sure you know what your actual credit score is before you go and apply to the bank. Again, the credit reporting agencies, how to contact them. You can pull your free annual credit report. There's only one place that you can do that. It's called annualcreditreport.com. The free annual credit report is not free. You'll go in and they'll say, hey, give me your credit card information, and then we'll give it to you. But that's not it. If they're asking for your credit card information, then you know it's not the free credit report. So annualcreditreport.com is the only federally authorized site to get your free credit reports. By law, each of the 3 main credit reporting agencies are required to provide you with your credit report free at least once a year. And as of right now, because of the pandemic, they opened that up to be able to pull it. I believe it's every 3, no, it's every week now. And I believe that's going to end in March. It's slated to end. We'll see if they extend it. But we know you can do that for free. And when you pull those, you're going to be able to see any negative things and positive things on your credit report, but they won't give you your actual score. In order to do that, you have to pay for that. You can stay up to date year round by, some people will go in and get their credit report pulled every 4 months from a different agency. So you may go into Equifax and pull one this month, and in 4 months you may check out the TransUnion. 4 months later, the Experian report. That's a good way to monitor your credit year round. If you've never done it, I highly recommend it, just so you see what's out there. What is your history like? what is being reported to these people. Occasionally we'll have somebody come in and say, this is being reported, but this is not my debt. And we challenge it and they have to remove it if they can't prove it. So knowing what's out there is important. We can order your credit report at NHP. That's another option. And that one is very, very similar to what the banks are going to be pulling. So we charge that cost, that $32.60 for an individual and $51.95 for a joint report. We don't make any profit from that. It's just the cost that it costs us to pull the report, and it will show us any history you have and then the actual score that we're working with. And if we pull the report, we're happy to go over it and review it with you so you understand it, and then maybe make, if you want us to, we can make some plans for how to improve it, make a goal. You'll receive a copy of your report from all 3 reporting agencies with the scores and the one-on-one confidential session with the coach to review it. Just a note that when we pull it that way, it's considered an inquiry, just like if you ask for a credit card at Kohl's or went in and asked for a car loan. So we want to be careful about doing that very often because that actually brings your score down. So just to note, that is an official inquiry if we do it that way. So building credit. Having no credit isn't the same as bad credit. It's actually a clean slate to build good credit. You can also apply for, if you have no credit, you can also apply for a home loan with non-traditional credit. Some agencies or banks will be happy to work with you to have that. Others are like, no, not so much. So you may have to shop around a little more, but they will look at things like rent or car insurance payments. They can look at your utility bills, like your gas and electric payments, to see how you've paid them, or any large recurring expense, maybe child support payments or childcare that you can prove that you've paid on time. Traditional credit, excuse me, that would be, if you are going to build good credit, applying for a low balance credit card. Sometimes a secured credit card where you go in and you secure that credit card with money in a savings account. That would be a really easy way to build good credit. And the banks don't know if that credit card is secured or not. It just looks good as long as you're making your payments on time. You could apply for a loan using savings as collateral, or apply for a loan with a cosigner. Those are all good ways to start building good credit if you don't have any. A warning about credit fixes. If you know you have some credit issues that need addressed, avoid debt relief or debt settlement companies or services that claim they can eliminate debt or fix a credit score. They usually charge you a lot of money to do things that you could do, or we could even guide you to do, to fix things. And it's really not in their best interest to help you make a lot of progress really quickly because they want you to keep paying them. Scammers will often ask for payments before providing services, or they overpromise quick results. No one can create a new identity for you, so watch out if that's a promise. If your credit is bad, it may take some time, maybe even a few years, to repair and improve your credit legitimately. So, ways that you can improve credit. You want to start by requesting your copies of your credit report from all 3 credit bureaus, either through us or through that annualcreditreport.com. You can seek professional help. Contact a reputable nonprofit credit counseling agency like NHP. There are others in the area as well that can assist you for free of charge, and prepare and follow a realistic plan. If there are errors on your credit report, you want to request an investigation or dispute with a letter typically, most of the credit bureaus, I'm pretty sure all of them, not 100% about Equifax, but most of them have dispute letters online. So you just go on their website and dispute it that way. Used to be you'd have to actually type up a letter and mail it out, but we could help with either of those. And then paying past due accounts, contacting your creditors to negotiate repayment plans and ask for more favorable lending terms. So you got to make good on anything that's bad debt that's still out there. Paying your bills on time. Good credit history stays on your report forever. So that's a bonus. The golden rule for keeping good credit or maintaining good credit is don't let anything become 30 days late. If you have to make if you miss a payment due date, just make sure it's not 30 days late. Keeping balances low on credit cards and other revolving credit. Pay off balances monthly if you can. And if you can't pay it off in full, pay more than the minimum required payment. Apply for new credit accounts only if you need it. And pay off debt rather than moving it around or consolidating it. All right, there's a little bit about student loan debt crisis. That is a really big ball of wax, so I'm not going to delve too deep into that. But we do know that people are getting so bogged down with student debt that it's delaying them from buying homes or moving forward financially. So there are places that can help with managing that student loan debt. We're happy to guide you or tell you who can guide you if we can't. A little more about student loans. Keep going here. Knowing your rights is important. So when it comes to credit, creditors cannot discourage you from applying or reject your application based on the protected classes. That would be race, color, religion, national origin, sex, marital status, age, or because you receive public assistance. They cannot deny you credit because of those things. If you think that has happened, there are ways we can report that. So please feel free to reach out if that's ever happened. You must be told if information on your file has been used as grounds to deny your application for credit, insurance, or employment. So if they pull your credit and they're not going to offer you whatever they said they were going to offer you, they have to tell you why. What is it about your credit that's causing that? You have the right to dispute incomplete or inaccurate information. Consumer reporting agencies must correct or delete inaccurate, incomplete, or unverifiable information. So if you dispute it, there are certain steps and certain time frames that they have to work within, or they have to take it off your report. Consumer reporting agencies may not report outdated negative information. And access to your credit file is limited. People can't just go and pull it. You have to give them permission. A creditor, insurer, employer, landlord, or any other business must have your written consent to pull your credit. All right. So avoiding identity theft is also important because we wouldn't want this information to get out and people abuse your credit information. Only provide your social security numbers as needed. Be cautious and protective of your personal information. Shred your documents. Keep your receipts to verify your transactions. Store personal information in a safe place. Don't carry unnecessary information, especially like your social security card. Don't leave it in your wallet. Create unique passwords. That can be a tricky one. Pay attention to billing cycles. If you know a credit card bill should be coming and it hasn't gotten there, like, something's fishy about this. Maybe someone's gotten a hold of that information and they've had it moved to another house, so you wouldn't catch on that they're using your credit card. Order your credit reports annually. Keep your mail safe and opt out. Opting out information again, and I will send that out with the slides tomorrow. If you suspect identity theft, you want to contact your creditors immediately. Let them know, hey, I think my card's been stolen. You need to lock this account. Contact the fraud department of all 3 credit reporting agencies and consider freezing your credit. So when you freeze your credit, you are putting a block on it so no one can open new credit in your name without them going through a special process. It's a little more cumbersome, but it protects. If you know you're going to go out and apply for a home loan in the next year, you may not want to do that. But if you know you're not going to be applying for new credit, then it's a great idea to freeze it. That way, identity theft doesn't happen to you. You want to report any identity theft to your local police station, reporting it to the FTC at identitytheft.org, reporting it to idtheftcenter.org also, and keeping records of all communications about it. A little bit more about credit freezes. So they didn't used to have this, but this started back in 2018, where you can call and freeze your credit online or by phone. You'll of course need to freeze it with all 3 credit reporting companies, and it prevents loans and services from being opened in your name without your permission. All right, so there is review. What did we learn about credit? How to order your credit reports and your scores. We talked about ways to improve your credit, non-traditional credit, ways to protect your credit and your rights as a consumer. So we talked about challenge for next week of thinking about your budgets, maybe tracking your spending, maybe writing things down. And then also we'd like to throw in there, maybe take a look at your annual credit report for free and see what's on there. Definitely would encourage you to do that before you apply for any new credit. All right, so we covered a ton of stuff tonight, and we have flown through that last section. Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything that wasn't clear? Super quiet again. That's okay, no problem. I do have a quick question before we sign off for the night. I see I have 2 Jessicas here, and I'm not sure if they're the same person.
It's the same person. My phone accidentally logged in too.
Okay, no problem. I just want to make sure I'm giving credit to everybody who's here. All right. So that concludes this class. Just, as always, I'm always open. If you want to sit down one-on-one and talk about your specific circumstances, feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email. For those of you that are finished with class, I'll be in touch about the next steps. And for those of you that aren't, we will see you next Tuesday, same time, 6 to 8, same link. And we are going to cover working with a lender. We're going to have a special guest speaker, a lender, and then we're also going to cover home inspections next week. All right.
Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a good evening.
You too.